you can see my new agave plant here in the background.
Oh, yeah.
His name
very
is
nice.
Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Yeah, that's Bill. We're going to cut parts of him off and put it on our skin.
And so you named it. Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Emme.
And welcome back to the Bestiary, Monster Manual A to Z. This week, Emme, we venture into the Underdark to explore...
The Driders.
The Drider. What do you get if you combine a drow and a spider?
It's a Drider. It's literally
Drider.
the word. Yeah, they combined the words and they combined the monsters, and there you are. It's a drow and a spider. It's pretty straightforward. These are warriors, drow warriors, who were chosen by Lolth to be tested in some fashion that is not particularly well detailed in this book, which we find very intriguing.
Doesn't actually say what this test is, but okay.
It's of might and faith.
I mean, if you're a god, I guess those are the things that you're interested in, so yeah, sure. Tracks.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Important to Lolth, I'm sure. And if you fail, instead of getting a silver medal, you are made into a Drider. And these guys are then returned to the material plane, and they are shunned by Drow society.
Yeah, because having failed the Spider Queen, goddess of Drow society, they are cast out. They exist on the fringes of Drow society, at most as reminders of Lolth's power, but more likely skittering through the tunnels of the Underdark, perhaps leading packs of giant spiders themselves, and driven irrevocably mad.
Yes. By loneliness, by her own influence. It could be both. It's very much up to you, because as much as I say we're combining monsters here, we're not really. Drow, of course, are elves. They are people. And
I
so
imagine I would have a
Drider.
tough time if I found myself turned into half spider.
Yeah, and in many ways, the Drider is much the same. They have all their memories. If they were spellcasters, there's a variant. If they were a spellcaster before, and they were divine spellcasters, specifically the variant is here in the book, so they were very likely a cleric of Lolth, and to have that then stripped away from them.
Yeah, it's very much a kind of a shattering of identity. But as you say, they still kind of remain, to some degree, the person they were. You know, they probably still have a strong sense of pride, even if it is very warped by their experiences. And actually, I think that's a trait that is quite well reflected in the art that we get in the Monster Manual, because the pose that we see here is very much one of, look upon me, puny mortals, witness the power of my god, and I'm going to kill and eat you, presumably.
You know, this particular Drider absolutely looks prideful of that existence, which is, just by the pose alone, which is very unique to me. And again, this comes back to each Drider is probably going to be very, very different. Some Driders absolutely exude that sense of, I am a reminder of the power of my god, and I am a reminder of my own failure, and witness this. And that's definitely something I'm seeing here in the pose and the way everything's held. This armor, which is well put together, is clearly made not for a drow, but for a Drider. We've got some armor covering the spider bits. We've got a sword. I do imagine that there's variance on this, though. Again, going back to madness being a theme of the Drider, I know I'm imagining maybe somebody who's lost in that despair and loss and vengeance, maybe not looking this well put together.
I was going to say the exact same thing. For one who is presumably lost in the tunnels of the Underdark and driven to madness by their experience, this particular Drider looks like they spent a good couple of hours in front of the mirror that morning.
Yeah, there's definitely some hair gel happening here. There's some significant volume. It's impressive.
Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Lolth. I've got a better one. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Spider Queen.
Just get right on that. Get that commercials tunnel. Just put it straight in the Underdark, man. Get it.
Yeah.
Get it on all of the Scryan pools.
So while these guys might be relatively simple in terms of concept, Drow plus Spider, backstory, lore, not that complicated. Obviously, any DM could flesh these guys out as characters. That's certainly not a hard job to do. Mechanically and stat-wise, they are no joke. Challenge rating 6.
Yep. They are just kind of nasty. They got 3 attacks. Is that correct?
Three attacks.
3 attacks. 4 options for it though. They've got longbow. They've got long swords, and bite.
Yeah, so it can replace one of its longbow or longsword attacks with a bite attack, which is obviously going to include poison damage.
The mechanics of that. So if you look at this art,
mm-hmm.
and it's spider bits. There's no spider bitey bits. That's with its elf mouth. So I know, leaning into once again the madness motif here, I'm very much imagining a maddened drow crawling towards you and then just taking a bite out of you. Or maybe this guy right here, perhaps this very proud warrior grabbing you up and pulling it towards you and taking a bite out of you. It's whew.
Yeah, you could definitely up the sort of the creepy heebie-jeebies factor here. A bit of body horror, humanoid arms grabbing you as kind of spider legs skitter around you and literally just taking a bite out of you, infused with spider poison that it wouldn't obviously have in its full elf form.
No.
Yeah. Couple that with a 19 AC as a natural armor.
Yeah, that's the thing that really does astound me. So because this guy is a spider, he's got a very high dex, it's going to be hard to hit. But in this art, we see a Drider wearing armor on top of its natural armor. So I'm imagining, because again, these are people, the DM's going to take liberties, the DM's going to adapt this. I'm imagining that's just base. That's just 19 base.
Yeah, I mean, with the example you have in the art, if I were tempted to run this as like a character that perhaps the party interacts with more than just fights, I'm going to say that particular Drider has an AC more like 21. Because it's got thick spider hide and what looks to be like at least splint, if not full plate, on top of that.
Yeah, that could be some scale. You've got options for what this person is proficient with. And then on top of that, there is the spellcasting variant, which we touched on a little bit. So if this Drider was a cleric of Lolth before, then they still have access to a bunch of spells here.
Which is interesting, actually, given that they have failed a test of their god, that they retain that ability. But I guess Lolth is sending them out not just as examples of punishment, but as examples of her power. And so them retaining the ability to cast spells in her name, I guess, makes sense.
Yeah, it does at least imply that these spell casting abilities were not gained post-Drider transformation. So, of course, with Divine Spellcasters, you're still channeling the power of Lolth, but that means that she hasn't completely abandoned her Driders. She's still a part of them, which I think is very important to their character. I think you could play with the variations and the levels of that with how devoted they are still. And that comes back to something you were saying a little bit earlier, where honestly looking at the stats for this guy, and something I'm learning about D&D the longer and the more I play with it, that you're still very likely to interact with a Drider. And not just in a fighty way, in a talky way.
Yeah, they're almost they're too interesting a monster for, I think anyway, for a DM to just be like, here's a thing, fight it and kill it. There should at least be some like crazy monologuing beforehand or something like that.
At least.
They could be fleshed out to be very interesting.
I think so. I know in the book they talk about how, again, retaining some of their personality and all of their memories, they can continue to hold vengeance and grudges towards people in their life from before they were a Drider. So I'm imagining this guy might even be inclined to help you, or
Yeah,
in
potentially.
some way have the same goals as you. So you might actually even end up working with this one. There's a lot of options.
I mean, those kind of little sub quests where the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. You might, yeah, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that you find yourself working with one of these, at least in the short term.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on The Bestiary. Have you ever had a Drider monologue at you about its woes, or grappled you within its spidery legs? Please tell us the story about it down below. We'd really love to talk to you about it. And while you're there, you can like that video if you enjoyed this. You can hit that bell to be notified of when we release videos. You can subscribe, check out our social media links, and if you want to show us just a little bit of extra love, we do have our Patreon down there as well. We love our patrons so much, and we are so grateful for you. Here, you can watch some more videos and join us next week when we talk about the Dryad.